Richard Sherman, you've been pushing Brock Purdy, even Christian McCaffrey for MVP. Your point being that Lamar Jackson just doesn't have MVP caliber statistics. So did last night change your mind at all about that?
I'm not going first on this, Skip, because I don't feel like being interrupted when I make my point. Go ahead, Keyshawn, because this is going to be destruction. And I am interested to hear
so that's
this
how we're
perspective.
Play it.
Okay.
This is exactly how we're going to play it.
All right.
So, look.
You good with this, Keyshawn?
I'm fine with it 100%.
Okay, here we go.
So here's what I'll say, Richard. He locked up the MVP as far as I'm concerned last night because that's the biggest stage. Everybody watching Christmas night, as Skip said earlier, we've never seen this before in a long time. At least
30 years.
In my generation of understanding football, I hadn't seen it in 30 years.
Yes.
So now we talk about two things. Lamar Jackson is the reason that this offense goes. It just goes. We've seen him with him. We've seen the Ravens without him. He does not have two other teammates, or better yet, another teammate fighting to split votes like McCaffrey, like Brock Purdy. So that's another nugget. On top of that, there is 14 players with more passing yards, as I said before. And there's 13 players with more passing TDs in the NFL right now than Lamar. There's going to be gaudy numbers better and bigger than Lamar's by the end of the season. You're going to have guys like Matthew Stafford might have a few ticks more. You're going to have Jared Goff's a few ticks more. You're going to have Tua a few ticks more. None of those names that I just mentioned are even in the conversation for MVP, and their numbers are going to be better. One has already won the division. Another is trying to get into the playoffs. It most likely look like the Rams are going to get in based on the way that they've been playing. Then on top of that, when you dive into this season alone, since you so fixated on the numbers, and I'm not talking about just passing statistics. I'm talking about a dual threat, everything together. Because Brock Purdy doesn't do exactly the same things that Lamar does. Lamar throws 30-something hundred yards, running for 800 and something. He's got 4,100 total yards. Brock Purdy has 4,100 total yards. Brock Purdy has 31 total touchdowns. Lamar has 24 total touchdowns. Brock Purdy doesn't have 40 to 24. It's 24 to 31. You want to make it seem so egregious, and I understand. You play for the Niners. You cash a lot of checks for the Niners. I understand that. I get that. Now, if you want to just talk about when trailing, I'm just going to start off by saying Lamar Jackson passing yards when trailing is 685. You know what the TD to interception ratio is? 6-1. Completion percentage, 69. Passer rating, 110. Now I'll go to Brock Purdy. Passing yards, 1,000. 5-7 interception touchdown ratio.
When trailing.
So that just goes to show you the importance. Completion percentage, 63.7. Passer rating, 82 compared to 110.3, which means Lamar is leading the league in that statistical category. Now you say to me, it doesn't matter. Yes, it matters. Here's why. Because I'd rather have a guy that can, just like he did last night, you can't tee off on him because you now got to worry about him pulling it down, deciding to move around just like he did in hitting Nelson Aguilar in the corner of the end zone when they didn't know if he was going to run or he was going to throw. And you're sitting here trying to tell me that this dude is not the MVP of the National Football League based on some history. The league is not the same as it was a year ago. A year before that, the numbers aren't the same. Nobody's throwing for 49 touchdowns, 50 touchdowns this year. It's just not happening. So where we at right now, he's the MVP of the league, and I'll let you go ahead and dig up whatever you want to dig up.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure you were completely done. So, again, you watch a game, and I love Lamar Jackson as much as anybody. I've supported him the whole time. If he had his numbers that he had the MVP year, which was 43 touchdowns to 6 interceptions, 43 total, then we would be shouting from the rooftops, he's the MVP of the league. So you're talking about this team wouldn't be this. First off, we haven't seen them without him this year. So just like you said, no other years matter. He's been the starting quarterback for the Ravens this entire year. So don't make the point that no other year matters unless, you know what I mean? But Josh Allen has 40 total touchdowns right now. Does that mean he's the MVP of the league? No, it does not. He's accounted for 83% of his team's touchdowns. 83. No QB is more important to their team right now than Josh Allen is to the Buffalo Bills. So you can argue whatever you want to argue. You can walk off, because when you walk off, that means you don't have the power to make a conscious argument. And I hear you. The Baltimore Ravens defense had 5 turnovers last night. So when we watch that game and you watch them play against one of the best offenses in the National Football League and they have 5 turnovers, and you tell me Lamar Jackson was the reason they won that game, then I have a hard time with that, because I'm sitting there watching the game and I'm like, dang, that defense is giving them trouble. 5 turnovers. So again, we talk about every other year before this, every other quarterback. So we're going to go the percentage of touchdowns the quarterback was responsible for. So last year, Patrick Mahomes, 76%. He was responsible for 76% of the team's touchdowns. The year before, Aaron Rodgers, 77%. The year before, Aaron Rodgers again, 80%. The year before, Lamar Jackson, this very Lamar Jackson that we're talking about, was responsible for 74% of his team's touchdowns. And before that, Patrick Mahomes at 79%. But this year, we're talking about Lamar Jackson, and the percent of touchdowns he's responsible for is 55. That's not the same. So I like him as much as anybody else. But if you're telling me that nothing from previous years matters, that, hey, we're just going to throw away all logic for MVP voting that has happened in the past 5 years, then cool, I guess stats don't matter. But they have mattered in every other argument. When we talk about Defensive Player of the Year, when we're talking about Offensive Player of the Year, when we're talking about every other category, Coach of the Year, these stats matter, but we're just going to throw them out now because it's convenient for your argument? I don't think so. So you're talking about a year where the quarterbacks aren't playing well, then it's probably going to Tyreek Hill or Christian McCaffrey. And they played the Miami Dolphins. I love how you say the stats don't matter when he's been middle of the pack in every category this year. So you're saying the MVP of the league is middle of the pack in every single category: passing, completion percentage, yardage, touchdowns, rushing touchdown. Like you're not giving me anything to say. Usually when the MVP of the league, they're number one in at least multiple categories. There's not one category he's number one in. So when you're making this argument, Keyshawn, you're not making an argument based in statistics, concrete information that you can hang your hat on. You're basing it off of, you said one game, the eye test, BS like that. I hear you, but that's nothing to argue.
Richard,
I don't even have a rebuttal.
Keyshawn,
I know you don't.
Couldn't process your argument to the point that he had to go.
I don't even have a rebuttal.
Yeah.
Because the fact that you think because they got 5 turnovers, or better yet 4. I don't even want to count Sam Darnold. That was garbage time. 4 turnovers. I think they scored on every last one. I think
they did not. They did not.
I said
you're
I
not
think.
watching. You clearly did.
I said I think
no,
that they scored on every last one.
I don't want to hear think. I want to hear facts.
Yeah, okay.
They scored on 7 straight possessions.
They scored a lot. Yeah. At some point,
they had 3 turnovers in the first half. They scored 16 points.
The bottom line is they capitalized on it and they scored points, man. Just stop with it, Richard. I get it.
So just stop with what?
I get it.
Make an argument based in facts, Keyshawn. That's all I'm asking you to do. If you're not basing anything.
I gave you plenty.
And you didn't give me enough to win the argument.
So why is he the leader on the leaderboard and all the odds makers if I don't know what I'm talking about and you do?
He is the leader.
There's every week it changes, Keyshawn.
It did.
It certainly changed after last night.
Yep.
Yes, that is correct.
It changes every week.
Okay.
And the favorites for Super Bowl change every week. Like, what does it matter?
So, Richard, remember, every year is a snowflake. It's all different. You have to process all the information that's happening right before your very eyes.
Thank you.
And you see that the only stat that seems to matter right now that rises to the top is 12-3. That's what the Ravens are, because I think even you would admit this man has a lot to do with it. He is the leader, the playmaker, the driving force of the Ravens in the locker room, on the sideline, in the huddle, and with the football in his hands. And if you look hard at his stats, he has rushed the ball for 786 yards. And among quarterbacks, That's 231 yards more than anybody else. Justin Fields is second. So he is dominating running the football as a quarterback. And if we're just going to do touchdown passes, my guy, Dak Prescott, still has one more than Brock Purdy. But you don't hear me making any case for Dak to be the MVP for the last couple of weeks because he's not. Because he went on the road and he failed completely at Buffalo and he played just okay at Miami. He did not play like an MVP at Miami. So then you put into the context, remember, who was Lamar's favorite receiver? Who was his security blanket? It was Mark Andrews, and he lost him to a hip drop tackle. Maybe he'll come back at the end of the year. I don't know. It seems doubtful to me. And he continues to lose running backs by the week. He lost Keaton Mitchell. He lost J.K. Dobbins. And they keep just recycling and going back to the tried and true. And you can't tell me that they're loaded on offense the way the 49ers are loaded on offense. And I give you, even McCaffrey's argument is still very strong. And he had a very good game last night. He's 338 yards ahead of the next running back. It's Kyron Williams in rushing. And his total combined yards are 300 more than anybody else, more than Tyreek. So I give you McCaffrey even more than I give you Brock Purdy right now. But the point is, in the end, you just have to eye test it because the Ravens are going to beat the Dolphins. If they don't, you got to know. We'll flip it around. We'll do it next Monday. But I believe the Ravens will beat the Dolphins at Baltimore. Then they'll beat the Steelers in Baltimore, and they're going to finish 14-3 with the number one seed in the AFC. And I think they will rise up into being the Super Bowl favorite because the 49ers are still slightly above them as the Super Bowl favorite. But if all that happens, I think you're going to have to give it up and give in to the fact this is a new year, a different year. The mold has been shattered. And even with lower overall stats, you would have to say Lamar has been the most valuable player in the league.
Then we'll change the way they view MVP. You just got to be the quarterback of the best team in the league with the best record. I got you, Skip. The stats,
well, it always helps that you are. That's often the case.
No, and it helps that you're over 70% responsible for your team's touchdowns. So those are the patterns that this league has shown for every year before today. I mean, okay, I got you, Skip. But I'm saying the way you're saying it, like this is concrete. And if he had the stats that he had in 2018 when he won it, this would be concrete. This wouldn't matter if he won or lost in Miami next week against Miami. It wouldn't matter because his stats are so overwhelming that you would say, I mean, regardless of what happens, he's got the numbers. He's the MVP. It's clear and evident. That's not the case this year. And I like Lamar as much as anybody, but I'm a numbers guy.
Okay, but do drops count? Because for a while they were leading the league in drops. They had two big drop games that really hurt his numbers.
I mean, every team, I think Kansas City's leading them in drops. So do I say Patrick Mahomes is the MVP and that